In this tutorial, I'm going to demonstrate how to prepare sprites for animation in Construct Game Dev Studio. So what I mean by that is how would you get from a sprite sheet like this to character animation like this in Construct? Okay, so just a few words to start with on credits for the art. So I'm going to use a basic scene setup like I'm demonstrating here, and the backgrounds come from Analog Studios on itch, which is free, and the character art comes from Untied Games on itch. So yeah, thanks to both of those parties for their art. Without them, these games wouldn't be possible. Okay, let's get into it. So, what's the problem we're trying to solve here? Right, so when you first get into game development, you might not be particularly skilled at art, or you might not know any artists. So you probably start by doing a Google search for sprites, and you might want to know how to really simply get those sprites into animations in Construct. That's what we're going to do. So for example, you might start with a Google search like this. So 2D platformer sprite sheet, for example, and you'd look at the Google images and you would find a bunch of artwork like this, some of them labeled to tell you what the animations are doing, some of them not. Some of them will have a transparent background. Usually if you see the grey and white grid in the background like this one, that usually means it's got a transparent background, which is the easiest to work with. If you don't have a transparent background, which might look like this, so this is a white background, slightly more challenging to, well, there's another task to do in order to extract that. I'm going to demonstrate that quickly. And then we'll move on to the sprites that I've shown in the scene at the beginning. So, for example, this sprite sheet here has this cool kind of robotic mechanized, well, he's not mechanized, but he's a kind of a space warrior character, and the background here is white. So I'm going to save this image to my desktop, right, like this. It's a PNG file, which is commonly used for sprites in game dev. And then I'm going to use GIMP, and I didn't have this loaded, but I use GIMP because I'm familiar with it, and it's just a really good open source image manipulation program. So it does everything that, say, Photoshop does, and yeah, I like it. You can use other tools if you like. So I'm going to open this sprite sheet. And the first thing I said was I want to remove the white background and make sure it has transparency. So first thing is add the alpha channel, which is the transparency channel to the image, right? Next thing I'm going to do is click on this tool here, which is usually fuzzy select. I'm going to right click and go to select by color. And then I'm going to just click in the white background. And it selects everything around the characters. So if I press delete, then the white background is gone. And if I just click some other tool now and click outside the image, then we're only left with the characters. So that would be how you would remove a background if you needed to, okay? Now I'm going to move to the sprite sheet that I want to use for this tutorial. So I'm going to close this one and show you the next step. Right, so actually I will start by just showing you where we're heading first. So if I in Construct, if I look at the animations editor for a sprite, right, you can see, for example, on the top right hand side, I've got the idle animation selected, and it has a bunch of frames here. Okay, cool. Now this is the whole point of the tutorial, really. How do we prepare those frames and get them into Construct? Okay, so to do that, we'll start from fresh. I'll delete that character by pressing delete. I'm going to insert a sprite, an empty sprite, and just click anywhere in the scene. Okay, now we're ready for that. Now, coming back to the original sprite sheet, the sprite sheet that I showed you earlier. I'm going to open that in GIMP, and I'll zoom in a little bit, right? We want to prepare the idle sprite sequence, idle animation sequence. So that's this one here. There are a couple of them, a few of them. The bottom one is the longest here, but I'm just going to choose a short one for the sake of getting this done. Use the rectangle select tool, and I'll zoom in a little bit more so I don't accidentally select some of the images above. I'm going to select that strip of sprites. I'm going to edit copy or Control C, and then I'm going to go edit paste as a new image. Okay, and then I'm going to zoom in, and that's pretty much it. That's how you get the sequence of sprites for the animation you want. And last thing we're gonna do here is just export it as a ping file in case we need to come back to it at some point. So I'm gonna call this dude idle for the name of the animation and save that to the desktop. I'll just put it in sprites actually, and then export that, and just accept the default settings to export. Right, and just to double check that for everyone. So now we have this sequence of sprites for the idle animation ready to go. Okay, and then now back in construct, remember to get to that point we had created a new sprite, and we can double click on that sprite to open the sprite animation editor. And all we're going to do is we're going to go to this open box, but click the drop down and go to load animations. We're then going to browse to the idle strip we just created and click on import from sprite strip. Now I forgot to mention that if we have to know how many frames there are in the sequence for it to evenly divide them. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and we'll put that into here. Just one row is correct and it is horizontal, so we'll click import. And there we have it. We can see now all of the frames of that animation are correctly shown. And just to polish this all up, we're going to fix a few things with these sprites. So the first thing is, see the bounding box outlined by the black grid? That we can reduce that, we can fit that to the shape of the sprite just by clicking this auto crop button here. And that's nicely fitted to him now. And we do that mainly because we want the collision box, which is what determines when the character will interact with other objects in the game. We want to set that to the same shape as the bounding box actually. So what we're going to do is we're going to right click on one of the nodes on the collider after I've clicked here, and we're going to click set to bounding box. And now the purple collider is also rectangular. And that's cool. And at the same time, we can also, to speed all this up, we can go apply to the whole animation. If we did click apply to all animations, then any other animations we have up here will have the same effect, and that may not be what we want. So just click apply to whole animation usually. And you can see the next one has the rectangular box as well. Only thing left to do with the sprites, the colliders, is to now fit the bounding box, auto fit the bounding box for the rest of the frames. So we're going to run through and do that, and that's nice and simple with construct. You get used to these repetitive tasks in game dev, and it's nice to be able to do them quickly so you can move on and do the important stuff. And then finally with the sprites, we want to set their origin. So it's important to set this, see this little cursor here, the origin of the image, which I've been able to select by clicking that. I usually set it to the base of a platformer's sprite, like at the feet in the middle. That's because I want to know that when the sprite is on the ground, that the whole sprite is going to be above the origin point. So that, for example, if the sprite were kind of, if the sprite were like levitating during a jump, then you might set the origin slightly lower so that anyway, unnecessary detail probably, but we go through and set the origin to roughly the same place on every sprite, like this, like this, and this will also prevent any unexpected movements of the sprite during the animation. Okay, then the last thing to do in here is we can, we'll change the name of that first. Last thing to do is to we want this idle animation to repeat just over and over again. We want him to cycle through the animation. We're going to click the loop check box here, and we'll delete the redundant animation there. We can close this, and now he's ready to go. We'll increase his size a little bit just to be able to see this properly. So 120 on the scale. And then I'm going to put him on the ground so that it looks at least like he's standing on the ground. Okay, so if we run this now, we should see this guy, idling in his standing still animation. So that was all I wanted to demonstrate in this video, how to quickly get your sprites from a sprite sheet into the Construct Game Dev Studio for animations. Probably most important things to take away are how to extract those sprites from the sprite sheet using GIMP or another tool, and then how to how to import them and splice them up with Construct in the animations editor. So that's it for today, and see you at the next tutorial.